Good morning, my name is Sam and happy St. Patrick's Day. Today I wanted to make something kind of focusing on rainbows, and I'll talk a little bit why rainbows are associated with today along with the color green and just colors in general. And so today we're going to be making kaleidoscopes. Oops, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I'm going to put the kaleidoscope up to the thing.
Kinda.
And they're very pretty, I promise. You just kind of have to point up more than anything. And so we also have kits for these. They'll be out there on our front table when you come in. And in those are going to be a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll. Some are varying in sizes and thickness, but they all will do the same job. It just kind of depends what you got in your bag. There's going to be a piece of clear plastic, and you'll see why we need this later. There's going to be this thick, almost cardboard-like paper. It is also shiny. Though if you want some extra shininess, and I say this paper isn't the shiniest, there's a piece of this kind of foil. It's not exactly like tin foil, and it goes over it, and I'll show you how in a minute. You're going to get some little squares of tissue paper in varying colors. You should have a whole rainbow in there, along with a handful of beads, also in varying colors. And just kind of why I construct this and talk about it, I was just going to tell you the history of St. Patrick's Day, because not everyone knows. I know I don't. I have to always research these things because, it's not quite taught in school unless maybe you've gone to Catholic school or Christian school, because it is technically a little bit of a Christian holiday. It is based around Christianity. And so, that kind of brings us to the beginning of it, is St. Patrick himself. He was originally kidnapped and brought to Ireland to be enslaved, and he eventually escaped, and he eventually just said, you know what, those people need my help. So he went all the way back to Ireland where they tried to enslave him, and he brought churches and monasteries and schools and brought in general just Christianity to it. And the shamrock, like my brooch here today from last week, he would use them, and he used 3 leaves, not 4 leaves, which I learned, to kind of represent the Holy Trinity. And so that's where that kind of comes in play. Rainbows, after St. Patrick had passed, and that's when they started celebrating St. Patrick's Day, was just the promise of God. So they kind of went that, and it kind of, obviously today it's not the same meaning as it was then. And it was back in 400 AD, which is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so obviously things change and evolve to different meanings. And then today we kind of think of, like, you get the end of the rainbow, there's gold and, a leprechaun, things
Good
that
luck.
you kind of see, good luck. And maybe if you did learn it in school, whether you went to a Christian school or Catholic school, you might have learned the rainbow meant God's promise then. And that kind of brings that to this. And so I'll start talking about the first steps. So I took my clear plastic, and I don't know if you can see the purple lines around it, but I cut 2 circles based on the size of this. The first one you're going to want to cut a little shorter, but you can always start bigger and take away. That's something in a lot of this project kind of reminds you of. You can't add more, you always have to take away more. And so there's a clear piece of plastic with tape here in the center. You can kind of hear me tapping it. You may not be able to see it too well. And that's going to be the base for your beads and tissue paper if you decide to use those. And I will say they're kind of the easiest to see. If you want to do this project at home with things you already have at home, I would suggest that the beads be kind of translucent like these ones, because if they're solid colored beads, the light won't reflect anywhere. And if you're going to do tissue paper, I don't recommend a lot of it. I know I have a lot cut up here, and that's my other recommendation, is to kind of cut it up. But I think a combination of these ones will be really pretty. So I'm just going to try to pick these up. Because if you put the straight squares in there, then you're just going to get one solid color rather than this kind of pretty pattern. So I'm going to put a little bit of my tissue paper, a bit of my beads. And you don't want it to be too full, or else it's going to kind of block out the light, which is not what you want. And so I think that's all I'm going to add. And you can always just kind of like look from the bottom of it and double check, so I'm going to do that real quick, see. Got a little too much in there. And see, you can always take away, well, in this case you can add more, but it's always easier to take away, I guess. And so the next part, you're going to put this little piece of plastic on top of it and tape it down on all sides, because you don't want to make this thing and completely finish it and all your beads and tissue paper. And this one, there's glitter. You don't want that everywhere. Your parents, your guardians, maybe your siblings would get upset if, you spill glitter everywhere, or tissue paper or beads, because then you have to pick them all up individually, and it's just kind of hard. So this project in general is very much a tape heavy one. I tried to use just in general adhesive, whether it be glue or tape, but if you use glue, it won't really stay, and if you were to use something like hot glue, it would melt the plastic and kind of warp your toilet paper roll. So it's not the best option. So I will say tape for today. I promise not every craft we do is tape. And you may say, Sam, that looks like the ugliest kaleidoscope because you're taping all the sides down like that. I promise it does get prettier. You can see this one. You don't really see that much tape on it. But we have to construct it to then decorate it, or else it won't look as pretty, or it'll look backwards.
And you have to remember, if your friends make fun of your kaleidoscope because of too much tape, they're not really your friends.
No, they really aren't your friends. They judge how much tape you're using on your kaleidoscope.
So what do you eat for St. Patrick's Day?
Well, everyone kept saying corned beef today, but I have never heard where that tradition came from. Could you enlighten us, Miss Susan?
I don't know where it came from, but that's what I grew up with, corned beef and cabbage every St. Patrick's Day. None of it's green, so I don't know. And corned beef is kind of the stuff that goes in it is kind of like pickling spices. It's not pickled by any means.
Okay.
It doesn't taste that way, but it's definitely different than like beef stew.
Now, I have never had corned beef, or at least I wasn't aware of it. Sometimes, and my mom tells me later on, oh yeah, you've had corned beef plenty of times, and I have to
I don't know that she's
it.
telling you the truth.
Yeah, and sometimes she would tell me I was eating different things, so I'd learn to eat and like gain a variety of foods I liked. And it wasn't like fibbing, it was just more, I guess it's a little white lie, so I would eat, because I was originally a very picky eater, but now I'm not so much. So the next part I want to talk about is you're going to get a whole sheet of this kind of shiny paper. So it's going to be much bigger than this. But I went ahead and measured out and cut everything just for the sake of time. And I have like this, what are those little like sunbathing things?
Oh, yeah.
That's not what it's going to be used for, but that's what it reminds me of. So it was about an inch, and it's going to depend on your paper towel roll. Well, in an inch for each spot, and I cut it along, then I retaped it.
So that it would bend.
So it will bend like this. And like I said, it's not too shiny on its own. If you like the look of it, then you can keep it that way, but you do have this kind of silver foil that I put over it, and it's going to kind of keep that reflective thing. Again, if you're doing this at home, and do not pick up a kit. If you have tin foil, that's probably the best alternative. If it's going to stay a bit better, or you might need a thick piece of paper to stay behind it, just because it will stay in this shape. And you can go ahead, once you've made this shape, and like I said, you always have to take away rather than add, because earlier this wouldn't fit in here. And this will fit on its own and kind of stay in there. But I'm going to tape this one side so my kaleidoscope doesn't like shift around too much. So just a small piece of tape. I'm just going to put it in the middle. And now I have this triangle, and that's the main part of your kaleidoscope. In this one, because I didn't measure it too well, that's my mistake. It's more
you did
of
a bunch of sides.
Not as a pentagon, because it wasn't an octagon or a hexagon. It was 7 sides rather than an even number. And that was not purposeful. I just took away too much and couldn't add back, so I had to work with what I had. And I will say, if you make it a hexagon, an octagon, a pentagon, whichever you end up choosing to do, it still looks very nice, but the triangle is kind of I don't want to say a classic one, but it gives you the most variety in shape when you do it. And that's the main part of our thing. I didn't use any glue or anything to secure this part in because you can always take it out and change things. Maybe you want both a triangle and then a hexagon, and you can just kind of interchange them. And so that's the main part of it. And here comes the decorating. And you also have just a plain piece of construction paper in there. And this part you could probably glue rather than tape, and tape it around. I chose black for this one, just something different from this purple and blue one here. But as you see, I added little faces and stars. And since it's kind of rounded, it was hard to glue those things on there, so you can kind of see there's a bit more tape. But I promise not all of these are tape dependent. But that would be the main thing of your kaleidoscope. I'm just going to quickly tape that on there. And see, this one keeps popping out, so you might need to put glue or tape on the bottom of it. Or you can cut out another circle with your piece of plastic and put it on the bottom. It's just dependent on what you would like to do for your kaleidoscope. So I don't know if it's going to let you look in this one as well.
Oh. Okay.
And just one more couple of facts about St. Patrick's Day. The reason why we wear green is actually to celebrate the Irish more than anything. St. Patrick himself was associated with the color blue. So, I will leave you with that interesting fact, and I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day.
Don't forget to wear your blue.
Don't forget to wear your blue now. All right, bye guys.